Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Joanne MacArthur. I wanted to interview Joanne because of her top-tier ability to tell stories through photography that shine a light on the abuse that animals face behind closed doors at the hands of injustices and industries that exploit them. She is a premier photojournalist serving abused animals and has fostered an incredible reputation. Her work extends beyond her own photography and lends itself to community building and empowering a movement of talented photojournalists following in her footsteps. Joanne is not only an incredible artist, she's also my friend. Here's our conversation. We've known each other for a long time, and I've got to tell you, every single time I've seen one of your posts over the last 11 or 12 years, I feel moved. Beyond just the talent you have for capturing amazing photos, you have a great eye for selection of which ones to share on social media. So how do you use photography to tell the stories of animals who are abused behind the closed doors of industries that exploit them?
Well, use is the word we can focus on here. How do we use photography? And that is the point of animal photojournalism. It's to be used to further change and progress. It's to be used strategically, different images for different audiences. Now, of course, there are generic audiences on social media. And so, what we do there is we balance the good and the bad. We include images that are relevant to current news stories and so on. So it's strategy, strategy, strategy. And and that changes, like I said, depending on your audience. If they are newer to animal issues, you don't want to bludgeon them with gore and sadness. And so that's where storytelling comes in. And part of why we have success in our reach at We Animals Media is that we're not just saying, look at the terror. We are including facts. We're including what it's like for us as field workers, as photojournalists. People are really curious about us. We're a fascinating, like photographers have always been a fascinating bunch, and that's actually why there are so many documentaries about photographers. People are like, "Wow, like why do they do what they do?" And so it's important for us to tell stories about ourselves and what it was like, and not just show an image, but tell the story. And I've got lots of those, and I think that's also why We Animals thrives is because I can tell you a long story about the chimpanzee used for research, or the bear used in bear bile farming, or the hen that looked back at me while she was cramped in her cage in Spain, and so on. So that's the beginning of the answer. We could probably just like tackle this one question for a long time, but maybe I'll leave it at that.
It's a beautiful way to describe storytelling. Of the many different ways in which a person could advocate for animals, what drew you to photography as your main tool?
Well, it's quite personal. In fact, I just loved it. I like to be out in the world collecting stories. I'm really curious about people, which is a really good trait as a journalist or a photographer. And I get to be out in the world experiencing things without me being front and center. And in fact, when you're a photographer, you are literally behind a machine, and the machine is the guide in a way. And and that really satisfied my desire of how I wanted to be in the world. I wanted to be a collector of information, a collector of stories, and a disseminator of stories. I see the world from a point of view of awe, very much awe and curiosity, and I want other people to feel that. I want other people to experience the awe that I have when I'm looking at something, honestly, anything. There's a story behind every person, there's a story behind every animal, and I want to get that story. I want to make something poignant and beautiful of the mundane. I want to elevate people's tragedies. I want to elevate animals' tragedies so that we can also experience the empathy that I feel, and the compassion. And then hopefully from that, the action that I want to create. I want all of us to not just look at pictures, but feel the desire to help the person or the animal in the image and create change.
Well, you help so many animals and you've created so much change. I know many people who have been impacted by your work. And as a photojournalist, you have this view from behind the curtain of animal abuse that most people will never have. Do you have any stories about a particular experience in the field that's made an impact on you?
Hmm. Okay, I think there's 2 different questions there. I'm gonna maybe start with the first one. The second one, let me get this straight. The second one is like, how do I go back? How do I stay grounded and focused? And the first one is about, stories from the field. Um, well, there are 2 kinds of stories that I can tell, and one of them is about the adventures that we have as investigators. And that might seem trite or shallow, but it isn't. What I mean is that there are very few of us in the world who go out and sneak into factory farms and fur farms and go undercover. And there's a small band of us who do that. And I feel like I have families or like these bands in different countries. And when you do this kind of work, which is difficult and full of hijinks, there are those stories, just totally ridiculous getting chased off of places and like total hijink stuff that bonds you. But so there's that level of story, and I have lots of those. Um, like, these dogs that are on Swedish farms, and we call them murder dogs. Like, I don't know what the breed of dog actually is, but there's just this kind of big badass dog who are trained to be guard dogs on farms in Sweden. And, there's always a lot of talk of, like, will there be a murder dog, on the Swedish farms that we go to. Anyway, lots of strange stories like that. But, the stories that I'm really there for are the stories of the animals. And, there's nothing funny about that. We go into factory farms to, document how these animals live and die. We could try to go in invited, but generally I know I do try that. We do try that. When I say we, I mean investigators and I. And, we do try that route, but generally farms aren't open to journalists. Um, Farms are nasty places full of dead animals, injured animals, suffering animals, um, emotionally checked out or scared animals. These aren't fun places. And if you do get it invited in, to a large facility, you might just see 1/10 of it, if that, and they'll have cleaned it up, and they'll have removed the bodies of rabbits or piglets or chickens and added bedding, but that's not an accurate portrayal of what the inside of farms look like, and so it usually is preferable to go in unannounced, unfortunately. And, then we undertake the very serious work of documenting the conditions, the animals live in and documenting them, um, waiting until they calm down a bit. They're often nervous when people are around. So you stay quiet. You try not to intrude on them. It's, an interesting position to try and take because you are intruding. You're, making any animal afraid, and the reason for that is that they are afraid of humans because of all the things that we do to them. So you stay quiet, you take their pictures. Often the animals become very curious about you because it never happens to them that someone just sits in front of them, and observes them, and then they get a chance to observe us. And so when the animals sort of engage with you, that's my ideal time to take a picture because I can get some eye contact. I can get them in a more calm state and a more natural state, as natural as it can be, which, sorry, wrong word. Get them in their current state within the cage, so trying to get a glimpse of their experience. What is it like for them to be in this dark place, in this cramped cage, unable to turn around, unable to flap their wings, unable to swim more than in tiny circles, and so on. And those are the stories that we get out into the world. And I've done that in over 60 countries now. And over the course of 20 years, used to be just me and a camera with my project, We Animals. But We Animals is now about a dozen staff, full time, part time contract, and 110 photographers. And we give assignments globally. And it was really nice to take that step from uh, this small project to something international because I wanted to, of course, have maximum impact with the work I was doing.
Wow, 60 countries over 20 years. That is truly incredible. My work entails witnessing a fair amount of animal abuse from behind a screen, and that can be difficult. I can't even imagine experiencing that in person from behind the lens. How do you stay grounded?
Well, who says I stay grounded? Well, I stay a little bit grounded, and I think it's taken a lot of practice. And I certainly suffered more in the earlier days, in the earlier years than I do now because I couldn't extract myself. Once I was home, once I was in bed or waking up in the morning or out trying to have a nice time, I couldn't extract myself from the suffering I had witnessed. And I did need therapy for that. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I eventually worked on the tools that I needed to pluck myself psychologically out of the factory farms and remember to just engage in my one beautiful life that I have. Like, we all won the lottery being here, and I want this short time that I have on earth to be used for activism and to be in service of others, but also to have a really good time and to not be suffering all the time just because there is a lot of suffering in the world. And so that takes practice. That took a lot of self talk, that took a lot of therapy, and also practices like my Buddhist meditation. I've been studying Buddhism and attending meditation retreats for several years now, maybe 15 years now. And that helps to bring perspective and harmony and focus and the ability to be in the present moment. And so when I am not in the present moment, I can certainly spend all my time psychologically with factory farmed animals. And I just don't think that that's of service to me in the day to day. Now, that doesn't mean I neglect those animals in my psyche all the time. I'm very focused on improving things for them. And when I need to tap into the sadness and the rage that I feel, I'm able to do that. And that helps me write. It helps propel my work forward. And, but then I can put it away. So I have learned, I sound like a Jedi master or something, but I'm not. It's always training. I'm always like training to get to the things that I'm saying, like compartmentalizing, being in the moment, being present, and choosing when to feel things and when not to feel things. So, yep, work in progress.
Social media has really become a big component of my animal advocacy. In the decades that you've been combining photography and animal protection work, how have you seen the landscape change in terms of the two and how they play together, particularly in the media?
Well, there are a few answers to this. So, with animal photojournalism, when I first went to my first agency called Redux Pictures, they took me on. I went to them in New York City, showed them my work. They were warm and welcoming, and they liked the work that I did. But they said, honestly, no one's going to publish this, but it's good work. So we're going to take it. And if anyone wants to license it, great. It was sort of like, we have faith in you. We appreciate your mission. No one's interested in your mission, but like, we'll support you. Anyway, it was more, it was kind of like that. It's really different now. There are other agencies that were like, what is this? No one cares about this. We're not taking this work. So I kinda love that I just went off and started my own agency. That's what you have to do sometimes, if you see a need and a niche or like something that's needed, you just go out and start your own. So I did that. Um, John, I think I veered off topic there and didn't answer your question. Can you bring me back? Oh, yeah, the changing media landscape is what you were asking. The changing media landscape. Okay, well, that work that Redux said wasn't gonna get published anywhere, it's getting published all over the place now. And I think there's an inevitability to it. We're finally understanding that what goes on in factory farms affects not just animals, which is my main priority, but it affects pollution and human health and climate change. It's all tied together. Oh my God, zoonotic diseases. Hello, we just came through a major pandemic. And I think these stories are being published more because of those other angles. And, you know, I wish people cared more about ethics and treating animals, but whatever's going to get the story out into the world. So it's just become inevitable that these stories must be published. I do hope that more of an ethical stance is taken, in media. I'd really like them to go there, but media is really scared of, well, they don't want to moralize, and I get that. That alienates people, but there are deeper ways of tackling stories of our ethical treatment of animals. Like, speak about it from a philosophical point of view. Like, invite Jeff Sebo and Peter Singer to talk about the ethics of animals in the New York Times and everywhere else. And let's see that if we're talking about the morality of using animals, these aren't personal attacks. These are just some like rights and wrongs. Um, if we can avoid causing suffering to anyone, it's a moral imperative. I think it's anyone could understand that. Like, if you can avoid causing suffering to someone else, you should avoid doing that. And so let's take our cultures and traditions and points of view out of it, and get to these important conversations, and that will help save more lives.
Great to hear that. Yeah, I can't picture many other industries out there whose landscape is constantly shifting in such dramatic ways.
Well, we're happy to follow the trends, and it's actually quite a pleasure to be incorporating more video into social media, because you can create stories better and faster in that way. So we do ask our photographers to shoot behind the scenes footage so that we can tell more stories. And we really enjoy putting together short reels that, either you make a video out of a bunch of photos with a narrative on top, or you combine photos and audio and video. um, it's a real pleasure, I would say. I'd love to do more and more of it.
Wow, I hadn't even considered that. You don't get to see your own images until weeks after you've taken them? Amazing. How do you approach the ethical considerations of photographing animals in distressing conditions?
Yeah, you don't want to add to their distress. That's the main thing. You also don't want to be a biohazard. So we always wear full biohazard gear when we go into any animal industry. Um, Yeah, you wanna go slowly and quietly. You never use flash. Of course, flash even alarms us and can be hard on our eyes, so we don't use flash. We have handheld lights that have dimmers on them, so you dim, like, up and down slowly. You get them accustomed to you being around, and if they don't calm down, you just move on. Mink can be that way sometime, especially if mothers have, a litter of kits. And so that generally is a situation where the moms aren't going to get used to you. So you just move on quickly. Whereas hens are really curious. Um, Pigs are very curious. Pigs will want to smell you, or uh, and cows will want to sniff you and lick you. And so you just go carefully. I find I talk to them a lot in a very low voice. If anything, I'm just saying, "I'm sorry," and, "I'm sorry that you're there." And, I find that animals are attracted to us almost always and quite quickly. Like, within a minute, they've gone from the back of the cage in fear to the front of the cage, and they're looking, and they're smelling, and they're assessing. Yeah, and, just leave without a trace. Generally, that is how we do things, so that we are not alarming the farms. The more farms know that we are there, the more there will be ag-gag laws that prevent us from being there. Of course, there are other tactics, like going in and making a big media splash about it. That's often referred to as open rescue, where you take animals and you make a big thing of it. I photograph those events, but I haven't personally done them. One of my photographer friends was attacked recently. It drives me absolutely nuts when the public attacks photographers for not helping animals. So we go to the front lines. He was photographing the dog meat trade. Like, this is horrific. He was photographing animals, dogs being bludgeoned and cooked, and he posted these very important pictures that people need to see. And, some of the audiences were like, "Why didn't you save the animals?" And I was like, "Come on, please, please." Like, when I'm attacked in that way, like, I have literally met millions of animals, and millions, tens of millions of animals. I've been to a farm in one night that had about a million broiler chickens, and that's just in one night. And, of course, we would love to help the animals. It's really painful to not help the animals, I will say, but we have chosen to help them in a unique way that we very few people do. And we go in and we document and we leave with their pictures, and those animals get killed very quickly, but sometimes their pictures live on for decades. Their stories live on for decades.
You are absolutely doing the best you possibly can do. I'm very grateful for such a beautiful response, and I love the picture I have in my head of you speaking to these animals in such a low voice because you do have such a calming presence about you. I know many people who have been impacted by your work. When I've shared it through my own channels, I've had people tell me how moved they've been, and some have even told me that they went vegan because of it. What's your favorite example of your work making a difference for someone?
Hmm. Well, there have been, dare I say, thousands of people over the years who have contacted me personally to say that an image that I have shot has moved them to stop eating animals or to take up advocacy and all this. I could give one example, but I want to go broader and say that one way that I love to have impact in the for animals is to pair up with an NGO who does really good work at the grassroots level and at the political, national, federal level. Excuse me a moment. Mm. And one of my favorite examples of that is a group in Taiwan called Environment and Animal Society of Taiwan. And I went there with a filmmaker and them, and we just drove around the country for 2 weeks documenting industries of all kinds: quail egg farming, chicken farming, dairy, like pigs. We did the whole thing. And they use those images for years in their grassroots advocacy and in helping to ban the farming of ducks in cages and things like that. So year after year, we were seeing that work being put to use. And so for me, the that's a great sort of program to put together. And it's also great when you can combine our work at We Animals with the NGO and a media outlet who wants to, like, maybe a major media outlet that wants to put out a story that we're working on, and we do that all the time. We see it all the time, and so that's sort of impact, a maximum impact examples. But then coming back to the individual animals, and it's always about the individual animals. You can have greater impact with a photo if there's a story behind it, and whether it's my perception of the experience that I can share with you, or where the journalism comes into photojournalism. You research, like, about the species or about how long they live and die, what the conditions are. And I had the opportunity to do that with a chimpanzee named Ron. And Ron, because of this photo and the storytelling, so many people have felt for him and have felt for animals used in research. And with Ron, I met him when he had been rescued from over 25 years, kept in a tiny cage. His body was used for invasive research. They removed a disc in his neck. They did all sorts of things to him. But I met him after his rescue. I got to know that he was one of the happiest and most friendly chimpanzees at that sanctuary. He was like the meet and greet chimpanzee for the new chimpanzees. And when I talk about his personality, his kindness, his forgiveness, and what he went through, um, and I chart those things, and it really put a lot of important details together that people can relate to, and that's really important. So it's important to meet the individuals, to have eye contact with them. When an animal is looking into my lens, they're looking at all of you, the audience. and then tell their stories, get as much information as you can about who they might be, and let the stories do the work. And stories are how people have communicated since time immemorial. We do know that, and we've seen that in cave paintings, and we've seen that because we know about oral histories that have been passed through centuries and generations. So I have a lot of faith in stories, and I will continue to tell the stories of animals. Not just me, but me and 110 photographers. Out we animals.
I agree. I think you can make a great impact with a story with a photo behind it. For amateur photographers out there who are interested in utilizing their own skills and passion behind the lens to create a better world for animals, how would you recommend they get started?
Yeah, well, we get asked about how to do all this work all the time, so we created a masterclass. It's a masterclass in animal photojournalism. It's self-guided, 8 episodes, 2.5 hours, and you can, take in a 15-minute or 30-minute episode and then follow the curriculum that we give you. Go out and shoot this and do it this way, or tell a story this way, or edit. Learn to edit with these skills and so on. So our masterclass is a great resource for burgeoning animal rights photographers. And well, I mean, you're kind of making me plug my own. You literally asked about books, so I'm going to plug plug my our last book is called Hidden Animals in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is the proposed name for the current geologic epoch, meaning total human planetary domination. Um, so this book includes the work of 40 photographers, and it's global, and it looks at most of the industries that we keep animals in, that we use them in, but whether they are entertainment industries or farming industries. And it's a very educational book. It is full of facts and figures and details and stories about our very fraught relationship with animals. So I'll give that book a plug. And I just encourage people to use our website as a resource. There are over 28,000 photos and videos that people can use for their social media, their activism, their academia, their legal cases, whatever you need. We probably have it there, and we're adding new work every single month. And that is a free resource for everyone in the movement. I should tell you the website. The website is weanimalsmedia.org.
I've used the resource and it is amazing. It is a vital tool for every animal advocate and definitely a great way to get involved with social media advocacy. Is there anything that you haven't done that you would like to do?
No. I just wanna keep going, John. I just wanna keep going. I want to continue to build We Animals. I've been less in the field the last 5 years than I have been for in the last 20-25 years. But it's been great for me to have more of a, role behind the desk, just coordinating things with my amazing team. And, we have a lot of photographers now, and I'm just really keen for us to be giving assignments, working with NGOs, working with media, and just going more broadly and continuing to expand our reach. And for me personally, I do look forward to shooting more because that's where I feel very present and in the moment and alive, where I feel like I am out there physically doing my best to make a difference. And I will be out there a heck of a lot this year. In some cases, I can't talk about it until the work is done, of course, because it's investigative in nature. But in other cases, for example, I'll be working in India for almost a month doing capacity building, mentoring, and shooting. And it's going to feel great.
That's great. I love that. In your long, illustrious career, what has been your proudest achievement?
I am most proud of having built something that people keep flocking to. People are interested in animal photojournalism, and people are more and more interested in animals and how we treat animals. So I'm I'm proud of following my instincts on creating this thing that is has proven to be very necessary.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your incredible contributions to creating a better world for animals, Joe.
Thank you for helping me to get all of these stories and images out into the world.
Keep doing amazing work.
Cheers.
Joanne MacArthur's work is revolutionary. Our conversation was fascinating. It's one thing to believe that people should see what is happening behind the closed doors of factory farms and slaughterhouses. It's another thing entirely to actually go out there and get that footage yourself. What an inspirational human being. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you felt this conversation was meaningful, please share it with your friends and family. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to listen to upcoming episodes.